Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that will touch your heart, remind you of the power of love, and maybe even bring a tear to your eye. This is the heartbreaking story of a loyal dog waiting for his owner. A tale of unwavering loyalty, hope, and an ending that will leave you smiling through your tears. Before we begin, if you love emotional stories about animals, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming content. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family because stories like this deserve to be heard. Now, grab some tissues, get comfortable, and let's dive into the incredible story of Max, the loyal dog who waited for his owner until the very end and beyond. It was a cold winter morning when Max, a golden retriever with fur as bright as the sun, first arrived at the small train station in the quiet town of Maplewood. His owner, Thomas, was a kind-hearted man who worked as a railway engineer. Every morning, Thomas would take the 7:15 train to the city, and Max would accompany him to the station, wagging his tail and barking excitedly as the train pulled away. But today was different. Thomas had been feeling unwell for weeks, but he never missed work. He believed in keeping his promises, and the trains depended on him. That morning he knelt down, scratched Max behind the ears, and said, "Wait for me here, boy. I'll be back before you know it." Max barked in response, his eyes filled with trust and love. Little did Max know, those would be the last words he would ever hear from Thomas. Hours turned into days, and days into weeks. Max waited at the station, sitting in the exact spot where Thomas had left him. Passengers came and went, some offering him food or a pat on the head, but Max never moved. His eyes remained fixed on the tracks, watching every train that arrived, hoping to see Thomas step off. The station master, Mr. Harris, tried to coax Max into leaving. "Come on, boy, he's not coming back," he said gently, but Max refused to budge. His loyalty was unshakable. As the months passed, Max became a local legend. People from nearby towns would visit the station just to see the loyal dog who waited for his owner. Some brought him treats, others tried to adopt him, but Max always returned to his spot by the tracks. One day, a little girl named Emily approached Max with a sandwich. "Why won't you come home with us, Max?" she asked, her voice trembling. Max looked at her with sad eyes, as if to say, "I can't. I have to wait for him." Years went by, and Max grew older. His once golden fur turned gray, and his movements became slower, but his spirit remained strong. He continued to wait, his faith unwavering. One winter evening, as the snow fell softly around him, Max closed his eyes for the last time. In his final moments, he dreamed of Thomas. His warm smile, his gentle hands, and the sound of his voice saying, "Good boy, Max." The town never forgot Max. A statue was erected at the train station in his honor with a plaque that read, "In memory of Max, the loyal dog who taught us the true meaning of love and devotion." To this day, people say that if you visit the station at dawn, you can still feel Max's presence, watching over the tracks, forever faithful. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the winter clouds, the station was unusually quiet. The snow had stopped falling, and a soft glow illuminated the statue of Max. Passengers began to arrive, their footsteps crunching in the snow, but no one noticed the faint shimmer near the statue. Unbeknownst to the townspeople, Max's spirit lingered, not out of sadness, but out of love. He watched over the station, ensuring that every train arrived safely, and every passenger felt a sense of warmth. His loyalty had transcended life itself. One morning, a young man named Daniel arrived at the station. He was a journalist, traveling across the country to write stories of hope and resilience. When he saw the statue of Max, he felt an inexplicable pull. He approached Mr. Harris, the station master, who was now an old man with a kind face and a heart full of stories. "Tell me about Max," Daniel said, his voice filled with curiosity. Mr. Harris smiled, his eyes glistening with tears. "Ah, Max. He was the most loyal dog I've ever known. He waited here for years, hoping his owner would return. Even after all this time, his story still touches everyone who hears it." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He knew he had to write Max's story, but he also felt a deeper connection, one he couldn't quite explain. As Daniel spent days at the station, interviewing locals and gathering details about Max, he noticed something strange. Every evening, as the sun set, a golden retriever would appear near the tracks. It looked exactly like Max, but it would vanish before anyone could approach it. At first, Daniel thought it was his imagination, but soon others began to notice it too. The townspeople whispered that Max's spirit was still watching over them, guiding lost souls and bringing comfort to those in need. One evening, as Daniel sat on a bench near the tracks, he felt a warm presence beside him. He turned and saw the golden retriever, Max, sitting there, his eyes filled with wisdom and kindness. "Max?" Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. The dog tilted his head as if acknowledging him, and then stood up. He began to walk toward the edge of the platform, stopping to look back at Daniel as if urging him to follow. Daniel hesitated but felt compelled to obey. He followed Max through the snow-covered streets, past the old bakery and into a quiet neighborhood. Finally, they stopped in front of a small house with a white picket fence. Max barked softly and the door opened. An elderly woman stepped out, her eyes widening in shock. "Max, is that you?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Daniel was stunned. "Do you know this dog?" he asked. The woman nodded, her voice breaking. "Max was my son's dog. My son Thomas passed away years ago, but Max never stopped waiting for him. I moved away because the pain was too much to bear, but I've always regretted leaving Max behind." As the woman knelt down, Max approached her, his tail wagging gently. She wrapped her arms around him, sobbing into his fur. Daniel watched in awe, realizing that this was no ordinary dog. This was Max's spirit, bringing closure to a story that had been left unfinished. The next morning, the townspeople gathered at the station to witness a miracle. Max's statue seemed to glow with a golden light, and for a brief moment, everyone saw him, alive and vibrant, standing beside the tracks. He barked once, a sound filled with joy, and then vanished into the sunlight. The woman, whose name was Margaret, decided to move back to Maplewood. She adopted a golden retriever puppy, naming him Max Jr., in honor of the loyal dog who had touched so many lives. Daniel's article about Max went viral, inspiring people around the world with its message of love, loyalty, and hope. Years later, the station became a place of pilgrimage for dog lovers and those seeking inspiration. Max's story reminded everyone that love never truly dies. It lives on in the hearts of those who believe. And so, Max's legacy continued, not as a tale of sorrow, but as a beacon of hope and happiness. One sunny afternoon, as the trains whistled and the station buzzed with life, a little boy ran up to the statue of Max. He placed a small bouquet of flowers at its base and whispered, "Thank you, Max, for teaching us to never give up." As the boy walked away, a gentle breeze swept through the station, carrying with it the sound of a joyful bark. Somewhere, in a place beyond time, Max was finally reunited with Thomas, his tail wagging furiously as they ran through fields of gold, together at last. As the years passed, Max's story became a symbol of hope and resilience. The statue at the train station was no longer just a memorial. It was a place where people came to reflect, to find solace, and to remember the power of unconditional love. Margaret, now a beloved member of the Maplewood community, often visited the station with Max Jr. The puppy had grown into a spirited dog, his golden fur shimmering in the sunlight, much like his namesake. Though he didn't have the same history as the original Max, he carried the same spirit of loyalty and love. One day, as Margaret sat on a bench near the statue, she noticed a young couple standing nearby. The woman was crying softly, and the man had his arm around her, trying to offer comfort. Margaret approached them gently. "Is everything all right?" she asked. The woman wiped her tears and nodded. "We just lost our dog, Bella. She was with us for 12 years, and we miss her so much. We came here because we heard about Max's story, and it reminded us of her." Margaret smiled warmly. "Max's story has a way of touching hearts, but you know, love never really goes away. It stays with us. Just like Bella will always stay with you." The couple thanked her, and as they walked away, Margaret felt a sense of peace. Max's legacy wasn't just about waiting, it was about the enduring bond between humans and their furry companions. Max Jr. quickly became a local celebrity. Children loved playing with him at the park, and adults often stopped to pet him and share stories of their own pets. He had a knack for sensing when someone was feeling down, and he would nuzzle them gently, as if to say, "It's going to be okay." One afternoon, a little boy named Liam approached Max Jr. with a shy smile. "Can I play with him?" he asked Margaret. "Of course," Margaret replied. "He loves making new friends." As Liam threw a ball for Max Jr. to fetch, Margaret noticed something familiar in the boy's eyes, a spark of joy and innocence that reminded her of Thomas when he was young. She felt a pang of nostalgia, but also a deep sense of gratitude. Life had come full circle, and Max's story had brought so much light to the world. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew cooler, a stranger arrived at the station. He was an elderly man with a kind face and a slight limp, leaning on a cane as he walked. His eyes scanned the platform, and when they landed on the statue of Max, he froze. Margaret, who was sitting nearby with Max Jr., noticed the man's reaction. She approached him cautiously. "Are you okay?" she asked. The man nodded, his voice trembling. "I've traveled a long way to be here. You see, I knew Max. I was one of the passengers who used to see him waiting at this station every day. I tried to take him home once, but he wouldn't budge. His loyalty, it changed me." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Max touched so many lives. He's the reason I'm here today." The man smiled. "I'm glad his story lives on. It's a reminder that love and loyalty are the most powerful forces in the world." Inspired by the man's words, Margaret decided to organize an annual event at the station called Max Day. It would be a celebration of love, loyalty, and the bond between humans and animals. The first event was a huge success, with people from all over the country coming to share stories of their pets, participate in activities, and honor Max's memory. Max Jr. was the star of the show, wagging his tail and greeting everyone with his trademark enthusiasm. Children painted pictures of Max, adults shared heartfelt stories, and the station was filled with laughter and joy. As the sun set on the first Max Day, Margaret stood by the statue, looking out at the crowd. She felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in years. Max's story had brought people together, healed broken hearts, and reminded everyone of the beauty of unconditional love. That night, as Margaret slept, she had a vivid dream. She was standing at the train station, but it was different, brighter, more peaceful. She saw Max, his golden fur glowing, running toward her with his tail wagging. Behind him was Thomas, young and healthy, smiling the way she remembered. "Thank you, Mom," Thomas said, "for keeping Max's story alive, for reminding the world what love truly means." Margaret woke up with tears in her eyes, but a smile on her face. She knew it wasn't just a dream. It was a message. Max and Thomas were together, watching over her and everyone who had been touched by their story. Years later, Margaret passed away, peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. Max Jr., now an old dog, stayed by her side until the very end. The town of Maplewood honored Margaret's memory by adding a plaque to Max's statue, dedicating it to her for keeping his legacy alive. Today, the train station is more than just a place for commuters. It's a sanctuary of love and hope. People still visit to pay their respects, share stories, and find comfort in Max's enduring spirit. And if you listen closely on a quiet morning, you might hear the faint sound of a joyful bark. A reminder that love never truly fades. It lives on, forever faithful.